Chords of Orion has a live ambient guitar rig? Let's check it out. You've just been listening to the one, the only, so far, live Chords of Orion performance. I did this at an electro music festival in upstate New York in September of 2019. It was a blast. Anyway, I've gotten a number of questions since then about the live rig that I used for that show, so I'd like to break it down and show you how I put it together in this video. So before I get into the parts and pieces, I want to tell you about my goals for the rig. Number one is it had to be very portable. I didn't want anything super heavy, super big to haul around. Number two, it had to be something I could set up very quickly. By very quickly, I mean like 10 minutes or less to get to the point where I'm plugged in and can start making some sounds. And number three, I wanted it flexible, but not too flexible. In other words, I want it to be able to do what I need in terms of the live performance, but I don't want a lot of additional features that I'm not going to need and that are going to confuse me in a live performance situation. All right, with that in mind, here we go. The first ingredient, of course, is the guitar. This is one of my PRS baritone guitars. It's the SE277. It is a semi-hollow body guitar with two P90 style pickups. The one I used at the actual performance is just like this one, except it has kind of a smoky charcoal finish instead of the tobacco sunburst. All right, next up, let's talk about these boxes behind me. I needed some speakers to hear myself, so I got myself a pair, because I'm a stereo kind of guy, a pair of the Headrush FRFR speakers, and these are the smaller ones, the FRFR-108. And I gotta tell you, these things crank like nobody's business. They're super small, well, not super small, they're small, they're not very heavy, and they produce, I think Headrush says they produce 2,000 watts peak, which is crazy. Anyway, they get super loud. They've got really nice low end, and the Headrush is now upside down there. Sorry, guys. Super nice sounding low end, nice highs. It's just a really good full range speaker system. And again, I have two, so I can run in stereo. All right, I'm going to move the camera and let's look at what's on the floor in front of me. All right, guys, I'm laying on the floor. I gotta get me a wider angle lens someday. Anyhow, the next thing I want to show you is actually the cable. I have typically run monster cables from my guitar into the rig, which we'll talk about in a second. But my monster cable is like 20 years old and it was getting a little long in the tooth. My good friends at Sinusoid reached out and said, "Hey, Bill, can we send you one of the new Sable cables?" Sable cable. Yeah, sorry. So they sent me this beauty of a cable. It is super awesome, super heavy duty 1/4-inch connectors. I opened them up and the handiwork is just fabulous on the thing, and it sounds great, and I feel really good now that I've got a cable that I hope will last me another 20 years. All right, so let's talk about how this rig works and connects into the Headrush speakers here that you can no longer see. So first up is the Headrush Pedalboard. Okay, and I've demoed that, or I've used it on a bunch of videos here on the channel. It's a great unit. It is built like a tank. I mean, really solid, and it sounds great. So from the guitar, I plug straight into the Headrush Pedalboard, and what I'll do is set up a patch on the pedal board that includes the effects loop. And one of the great things about the Headrush is it has a stereo effects loop. So in this case, I take a cable, since I'm I'm going to put, you'll see where I put this FX loop in just a moment, but I take a mono cable out of the effects loop and I run it into a sideboard. So what I did was I got one of those small pedal train pedal boards, and I've got 4 pedals on this board. Again, I wanted something that was flexible, but not too crazy complex. So from the guitar, I plugged directly into the Headrush pedalboard. No pedals between the guitar and the pedalboard. And then what I'll do is set up a patch that lets me put some of my usual types of effects first in the chain. So I've got a compressor, that's that red rectangle, followed by a distortion. In this case, it's a tube screamer type of distortion, followed by an octaver, followed by an amp and an amp cabinet simulator. And I tend to go for a Fender style amp followed or coupled with a Marshall style speaker cabinet sim. I really like that combination. Next, on that second row, you'll see that I've got a volume pedal set up, and this is the internal volume pedal of the Headrush pedalboard. And then the next block you'll see is the effects loop, and this is what I'm using to send my signal out to an auxiliary pedalboard that I'll show you in just a minute. All right, once that signal comes back in from the effects loop, then I've got a couple of different delays going that are Headrush delays, the air delay and the dynamic delay. And I've got an optional stereo chorus and an optional reverb. So that's pretty typical of the type of patch that I set up on the Headrush pedalboard. All right, so let's talk about that auxiliary pedalboard. You'll see that I've got an input cable coming in from the Headrush, and it is a mono input. So the Headrush has a stereo effects loop, but the way I've got it set up is I'm just taking a mono out, and then I'm going to put a stereo return back into the Headrush pedalboard. So where I'm headed first on this auxiliary pedalboard is the Ditto X4 looper. And you guys, if you've been hanging out here, you know that I use this a lot for Frippertronic style looping and also just creating multiple looped layers of stuff. All right, from the Ditto X4, I go into the Strymon Dig. I selected the Dig because I really like the delay. It's just a beautiful sounding delay, and it's super easy to use. Remember, that was one of my criteria. I don't want this thing to be overly complex. All right, so this is where I start converting from mono into stereo. So I've got stereo outs from the Dig, stereo inputs into the Strymon Timeline. Now, I just said I want something simple, right? And the timeline can be pretty complex, but I've got just a couple of patches that I use live. I've got a tape patch set up here that I really like the sound of, and that's kind of where it stays, and I just use the tap tempo to adjust the rhythm. So anyhow, stereo in, stereo outs, and then I finally end up with the Source Audio Nemesis. And for the gig that I did in New York, I left it set to the shifter delay type so I can get the delay repeats coming in at a perfect fifth above the original signal. From the Nemesis, I'm heading back into the Headrush pedalboard. So the big question is, how does this monstrosity sound? Well, let's check it out. Here's my basic dry sound. And you can hear I've got a good bit of compressor in there. That worked really well for the show. And we've got some reverb. Really long reverb. Okay, pretty cool. And we've got some delays going. Here's the air delay. That's the 4-second delay, maximum time on the Headrush. And we've got the dynamic delay. right, that's cool too. So we've got a nice selection even on the Headrush pedalboard. Here's what the distortion sounds like. All right, so sometimes people talk about my distortion. Some people like it, some people don't. I know it's not like the standard distortion you might use for classic rock, but it works really well for volume swells and lots of delays, which is why I like it. All right, so let's talk about the effects loop. I'm going to go ahead and engage that. And here's some Strymon Dig. Oh, yeah. Now let's check out the tape delay of the timeline. And you can hear I've got that one set at a much lower level. Now let's check out the source audio Nemesis setting. I like that a lot. Okay, so let me go ahead and throw in the timeline delay. We're going to add the Strymon Dig, and I'm going to add in the dynamic delay on the Headrush pedalboard, and let's check that out with some volume swells. Now, if we add in some Ditto X4 looper and just create a repeating loop that kind of fades out, so that's what I have going on there, we're going to have some more Frippertronics type of stuff going on. So I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough of the Chords of Orion live ambient guitar rig. If you have any questions, drop a comment, or if you've got suggestions for live ambient guitar rigs, drop a comment also. If you haven't already done so, I hope you'll subscribe to Chords of Orion, ambient guitar stuff every week. I'll see all of you on the next video.